What can you put it, when you use the words masculine and feminine and sort of these forms and energies, do particular sort of frames come to mind or ways of being that you really see as sort of the signature, dialectic between masculine and feminine energies, or the things you really hone in on in that regard?
Well, like the pathologized masculine and feminine, or
like linear. So one thing that's really interesting is linear versus cyclical, right? And I absolutely think that ever since really traditional cultures, civilized cultures, and then particularly modernized cultures, we just turn time linear, and yes, we notice the seasons, and yes, we notice the moon, but basically every day, we give ourselves a little bit of a cyclical week, and, but basically no, time is this linear progression. But many cultures, especially oral indigenous cultures, do not think about time in that regard. They think about time as a cycle, and that's every bit as reasonable a frame to represent the transition, the unfolding of nature in cyclical ways. And so that broad metaphor is just one example then of thinking about, so masculine's more time linear, it's more logical and mental. We talk, in certain ways, although we can wonder about that. So I guess my question was, do you have, Jungian archetype animus anima? Do you have any other particular things that speak to your way of framing that?
There's a lot of things that have, I keep saying informed, but I think maybe it's really alive for me now. So for example, even the concept of, Marion Woodman, which was a Jungian analyst, and she passed, but she was she's one of these almost matriarchs of the feminine, but also there's Pat McCabe, and she's an indigenous woman that bridges the indigenous cultures with, because indigenous cultures, you don't even need to frame as masculine and feminine. I make a point of doing it because it feels important to say that, because it's missing. But at some point, if we honor it, then it's, I don't need to split it as binary, Yep. But for example, and I do agree with you in the mythic, from Gebza's, if I can try to quote him a little bit.
Sure.
The mythic. So you have the magic, which is connectivity because the developmental models these days, I think they don't do it justice. They always equate the mythic magic with less than.
Right. Well, you get the hierarchy.
You get a hierarchy, and you have childlike. That's like a child. And actually, when you see indigenous people and the connection they have with the land, and the connection they have with the river, and the connection they have, and how they sense into things, that's the magic. And the mythic brings the cyclical aspect of it, and the reverence to the goddess, and the reverence to the fertility of the earth. And so that's, I think that's I'd call the feminine, and the mental comes after that. And if we transcended and included the other stages, which I don't think is a mistake, because evolution does its thing, but this disconnection, this idea that the mental can be born out of the depth of the magic, mythic, and like it just unplugs itself. It's like one of my teachers, Philip Shepard, has become a friend as well. He talks about, it's like he says, when you come from the pelvic bowl, your awareness rests deep in the pelvic bowl. So when I have my period, when I'm menstruating, my awareness is in my pelvic bowl. And when awareness sits deep in the pelvic bowl, then I can't look at a tree, and it doesn't make any sense to relate to the abstraction of a tree, to the name tree. I'm relating to it's just relationality. It's just, there's no solid ego structure from that place in consciousness. And when the mental comes, and if the mental is grounded in that, then it's beautiful, because you bring the depth into consciousness, and you take perspectives, and you can birth different things.
Right,
But,
right.
but then if you don't have the grounding of that, you know, my Philip gives this example of, it's like going to the moon. It's like when the first astronauts, it's like going to the moon, and you know, you can take perspective on the earth, and you look at the earth and you're like, oh, it's beautiful, it's amazing. And then instead of coming back to the earth, which is the body, and living life from that place, integrated place, you actually just stay taking perspectives on perspectives on, just stay circling the earth forever. And that's problematic, because obviously that doesn't ground us in reality. So when I today I woke up, a friend of mine just shared with me, you know, what's happening in Afghanistan today. And I was just about to come, you know, 15 minutes before this call, and I noticed like a deep emotion arising for me, and grief and pain. And she said to me, oh, I'm sorry, you know, I brought this up now. And I said, no, that's perfect. This is perfect, because actually there's still a part of my mind that was still trying to show up in a certain way, and now it's going to be impossible, because I'm in my body and I'm in the pain of living in this time that we're living. And I feel that I don't want to be divorced from my pain. And when I think it was Jim Rutt, he came to Rebel Wisdom in one of these calls, and he was speaking about Twitter, and he said something like, if people criticize me, you know, I don't care, just criticize them back. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but
I can imagine how Jim Rutt might phrase it.
You know, it was something like that. And I was with that, and I thought, that is, you know, it serves him, and it serves a certain way of being, and it's maybe it's the masculine boundaried masculine, or you know, I'm gonna do my thing no matter what. And I was just saying, just reflecting, and I thought, I don't want to engage in this way. I want to engage in a way that I'm permeated, and I'm affected by reality, and I'm penetrated by reality, and I want to speak from that place. And it means that I might get hurt, because the way of engagement in the world we have created is a way that it's almost a space that if you don't have a strong ego structure, or if you're completely disconnected from the body, or if you either you have a lot of self-confidence, or I don't know, or some people might be also like, if you see politics or whatever, you can have a more narcissistic way of being. And so it's just we've been valuing those things, and we've been and I think it's time that we value both. You know, it's time that we value, when Daniel Schwarzenberger talks about, we've created a culture in which a whale is more valuable outside the ocean than inside the ocean. So, you know, that's not okay. That's not okay. And I think that the feminine reminds us of what's okay and what's not okay. And I think it's really important in all these conversations that we're having. So I think
I agree. I think it's super important.